Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fight Song Sports Podcast. As always, my name is Ty Hansen. Joining me today, Bryson Lewis. Bryson, I continue to say it over and over again, but we got another busy week that we're going to cover. You got baseball, basketball heating up at the right time, softball, golf, all of it's going on. I love this time of the year. We'll start out with some Husker baseball. A frustrating couple of weeks to open the season. You got Sam Houston State for 4 games, and then you go down and play a good TCU team for 3, and you come out of it 1-6. It's definitely not what you're looking for there, especially with the goal of this season to be hosting a regional. That's kind of what Will Bold has had his mind on all year. Not off to a hot start, especially non-conference, and in the Big Ten, where you don't play the toughest conference schedule. Compared to teams in the SEC and the ACC and the Pac-12, you're not playing that type of schedule. So starting 1-6 in non-conference play is just not great. And the issu's really just kind of been the offense. 76 strikeouts in 7 games. It's basically 11 strikeouts a game. They've got almost a third of their at-bats are ending in a strikeout. That's never going to win you games. And I've got on here a 305 team on base percentage. So you're not getting guys on. And then when you do get them on, you're not getting them over with productive outs or scoring them with productive outs. You got guys striking out. You don't have to score runs by hitting home runs and hitting doubles of the gap. All it takes is a guy that walks, steals second, pass ball or something, find a way to get him to third base. A sack fly and you score without even getting a hit. It happens all the time in college baseball. And when you got guys striking out a third of the time, that's an out an inning you're giving away to the strikeout. It's just not productive outs. And I think that when you get kind of down into the important part of the season in May and June, the teams that make productive outs win ball games, and strikeouts just aren't going to do it. So what do you think about the slow start here for Nebraska?
Yeah, obviously the big thing that jumps out to me, is the 300 team on base percentage. That is just never going to get it done unless you've got the best pitching staff in the country, and even then you're still going to have a couple things break your way. 305 on base is it's never going to get it done. And only 2 Big Ten teams got at-large bids in 2021.
Yeah.
You just can't start this slow. Like you said, they dropped 6 of their first 7. That's never going to get done, especially when team that was looking to host a regional this year.
Yeah, that was an important thing I had down here. Only 2 Big Ten teams getting an at-large bid. It's not the SEC or the ACC where there's 8, 9, 10 teams getting in. You've got 3, 4 at the most out of the Big Ten. This is a conference that, although it's Power 5, it probably isn't in the top 5 for baseball conferences in the country. And you pretty much got to win your conference to get in. And if you don't, then you better have a really strong non-conference record. And that's not looking great. Where I think they can turn it around, I think at this point, your goal was to host a regional. And at this point, I think it's easy to go, we better turn it around real quick, or else that's not going to happen. And which they do need to turn around, but also I think that's something you just deal with in the future. You let it you let it handle itself down the road when you get there. At this point, all you can focus on is just the next game, the next series, win the next series, and claw your way back to 500 and get back into the position to where you're one of the better teams in the Big Ten. You can't worry about the regional stuff right now. That was your goal before the season, and it hasn't gone the way it's needed to host a regional. But at that point, you just kind of have to throw it away and not worry about it too much. You can't let it get to your mind, and that's what you're thinking about every game. But they got a good chance to turn it around here this weekend. They've got UT Arlington and Northwestern State. They played both of them, I believe, 4 games, and that is at UT Arlington. They were in Arlington this past weekend, but that was at the Texas Rangers Stadium. They're not there this weekend, but they're at University of Texas Arlington, where they got 2 different teams, which is always nice. You're not stuck playing the same team for a whole series. You get 2 teams and 2 opponents that they they should take care of, and start to get their way back. But in terms of Northwestern State, we'll hop over to OU. That's who they had this week. They go 2-1 there, and a really solid weekend from them all around. What did you think of it?
Yeah, obviously on last week's episode, we talked about probably a sweep should be the goal. A couple things don't go your way. You take 2 of the 3. They get to 5-2 on the season. And, we talked about their pitching. Arizona, they gave up 2 really big innings when they played them to open the season in Arlington. That wasn't really an issue this week. They had 40 strikeouts in the 3 games they played. They also played in Arlington again this week and due to some of the ice that came through. And Chaz Martinez was named the Big 12 Pitcher of the Week. So something that was a really big question mark coming into this season after last year was pitching. And so far, they've looked really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. And Northwestern State, I think, is your goal if you're Oklahoma is definitely a sweep, but I believe dropped the first game, correct? Lost the first one.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. You lose the first one, and that conversation in the huddle is scrap it and let's go find a way to win a series. And in college baseball, no matter who you're playing, when you're going home 2-1 on a weekend, you take that every time. And a series win, no matter if it's a sweep or 2-1, you take that any day of the week. And you start season 5-2. I mean, they couldn't have asked for really a better start, especially with that tough first weekend down there in Texas. But the pitching staff has stepped up and kind of been the leader of this team. And they get a good shot to prove themselves this weekend. You got 3 ranked opponents: LSU, UCLA, Tennessee. Man, that's who you're wanting to play when you're hot to start the season and looking to make a name for yourself as one of the better teams. And this being a team that wasn't one of the top teams picked in the Big 12, was a middle to bottom half team in the pack. But man, they don't look like it. This looks like a great team. There's a lot of good baseball in the Big 12, obviously. And I don't know that they finish at the top this year, but they're definitely, to me, looking better than a bottom half Big 12 team, I think. I mean, you got a great chance to prove it this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a big season coming in for Skip Johnson. Maybe a little bit on the hot seat, probably would have got another season, but they've started hot, 5-2. And I mean, that's really important because they could very easily drop these 3 games this weekend. They're going down to Houston, like you said, number 8 LSU, number 23 UCLA, number 16 Tennessee. And this is going to give us a really good look at this team before they get into Big 12 play. Because I mean, obviously, you're going to be playing some really, really good teams in Big 12 play, and this will really show you how you stack up with some of those top teams.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the game I have highlighted has got to be that Tennessee team. I don't know if you've seen what they've been doing on offense this year, but they are just hammering everybody they play, putting up 20 runs a game. Haven't played the toughest competition yet, but it doesn't matter. Anytime you're putting up 20 runs consistently in college baseball, you have a good offense. We'll see how that pitching is able to fare against that potent offense of Tennessee. And, if they're able to hold them to just a couple runs, I think that this staff is legit this year. And that LSU game also winnable. You got a new coach down there after Paul Maneri leaving. They get Jay Johnson from Arizona, ranked number 8 in the country, obviously a very good team, but you just kind of never know, especially early in the season with a brand new coach, never know what you're going to get there. And a series win here, or even 1-2 with maybe a 1-run loss in one of those games, I think you got to be happy with. Just because this is a team that isn't in the top 25, they're on the outside kind of looking in right now. If you're able to hang with them, I don't like using the term moral victory, but you get one and maybe lose the other 2 close. You're still happy about it, I think, and kind of a, quote unquote moral victory there. But yeah, I'm excited. They got a big weekend, and it gives them a good chance to prove how good they really are.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll be something interesting to watch out for this weekend. But we'll go ahead and flip it over to the basketball side of things. And a pretty good week for the Oklahoma men's basketball team. They take on Oklahoma State in Bedlam over the weekend, and they get a win. It wasn't pretty by any means, but they win 66-62 in overtime. They had 5 double-digit scores. The team high was Tanner Groves, only 14. But anytime you get 5 guys in double digits, especially for a team like Oklahoma, who has really struggled offensively lately, that's big time for you. But it kind of got away from them. towards the end. They were up 14 at one point. Jacob Groves fouls out with 7 minutes to go, and Oklahoma State outscored them by like 17, something like that, until like 1 minute, 30-second mark, something ridiculous like that. And I mean, it was just turnover after turnover in the last 3 minutes. And they found a way to get it to overtime. And it wasn't the prettiest start to overtime, but they found a way at the end. Marvin Johnson comes away with a steal, extends it to 4, and that was pretty much that.
Yeah, anytime you're able to beat OSU, obviously Bedlam, a good rivalry and one that's been very good, especially in basketball over the last couple of years. You got to be happy with it. It wasn't clean, and that's just kind of been the thing about this team is they haven't been able to establish just good, solid basketball. We've seen them play good teams close. But I mean, you beat OSU, and I know there's a little bit of a down year for OSU, obviously not being able to make the tournament or anything. But I mean, at this point, every win is very, very crucial for a team that is kind of on the bubble. And anytime you're able to pick up a win, I mean, a loss hurts you a lot right now. You just can't lose, especially against teams that aren't super competitive. You have to win these games. And, although it wasn't pretty, you had more points than the other team at the end of the game. And that's all you care about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, losses really hurt you, and they're out of the first 8 teams out right now, so they've got to claw their way back in. And they picked up another win tonight against West Virginia, obviously another team towards the bottom of the Big 12. Not very good this year. They beat West Virginia 72-59. Tanner Groves again with a team high, 17 points. Jordan Goldwire also had 16. And they got off to a pretty good start. They took the lead like 13-10 or something, and I think it was 28-14 at one point towards the end of the half. And then they hit one of those scoring droughts. They went on, I believe it was 4.5-minute scoring drought. West Virginia goes on a 10-0 run to make it 28-24 at the half. And a big part of that was turnovers. Kind of the same story, 10 first half turnovers. And you just weren't really sure how they were going to come out of the locker room, because we've seen them come out like against Texas Tech on the road last week, and they barely score 40. You just never know what you're going to get with this team. But they turned around in the second half. Only 2 second half turnovers. They finished the game with 12 total. And they kind of just dominated the whole way in the second half. It was a really impressive win, albeit against a not very good opponent. And they've got Kansas State coming up this weekend, the regular season finale. And it's a must-win game. They'll probably get close to the bubble after this win tonight. And then a win against K-State puts you in a really good position. They'll be entering the Big 12 tournament. The winner of the K-State Oklahoma game will determine the 7 and the 8 seed slot. So if you lose, you're probably already out of the tournament. More than likely, that'll put you in the 8 seed. You'll get a game against West Virginia to win, but you'll have to go up against Kansas in the second round. If you beat K-State, you get the 7, and right now that would slot them against Baylor. Obviously, a very, very good Baylor team, and it's probably a loss. But you end the season 3-1, and maybe you play Baylor close, and you can sneak into the tournament.
Yeah, they don't have any games to give right now. Every single one of them, they pretty much have to win if they want to get in, and then maybe even do a little bit in the Big 12 tournament. I think you definitely have to win your first round game. But they're on the outside looking in, and I think a game, if you lose a game right now, it ends your season. So you got a little bit to play for, and sometimes I think at this point in the year, some of the better teams just kind of maybe put it on cruise control until you get into the conference tournaments, because you might be in a position where your seed in the conference tournament is guaranteed and locked up, and you can't go up or down. So you just kind of put it on cruise control, get a little complacent, and drop some games. But a team like this isn't in a position to do that, and this is where March Madness runs kind of begin. When your back is against the wall, you get some games that, every game is a tournament game for them, pretty much, win or go home from here on out. And they even need a little bit of luck, I think, to get into the NCAA tournament. So, if you're able to sneak in, or even in the Big 12 tournament, you've had some games where your back's been against the wall. Teams like that are in the top of the conference and top of the rankings, they don't have to play these games that are regular season, postseason games, if you want to call it that. They go out and they win every game by 20, and they're the top seed. they don't have that mentality of your back's against the wall. So I think this is something that, although you have to win, it can work out in your favor that you get these regular season, almost practice kind of postseason games where, if we lose, we're done, we're going home. But we're in a position to where this is good for us as well, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of hard to understand because you never want to be put in a position where you have to win, but also if you do win those must-win games, you have that experience headed into the tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got to beat K-State on the road this weekend. It doesn't technically end their season. They'll play a couple games in the Big 12 tournament if they lose.
Yeah.
But unless you beat West Virginia in that first round, because if you lose, you get the 8 seed, you play in the 8-9 playing game essentially, and then you got to play Kansas. And I mean, they've played Kansas close twice. One possession games both times, lost by combined 5 points in both of those games. I mean, it's a game that they've competed in. They could win, but it's just never where you want to put yourself. So I think you got to go in, you got to beat K-State up in Manhattan this weekend and see what you can do against the 2 seed, whether it might be Baylor or Texas Tech. We'll see how that shakes out. But it's really just back against the wall, and we'll see what they do.
Yeah, it'll be a fun way to wrap up the season for them. We'll see what they're able to pull out.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and flip it over to the women's basketball side. And like we were talking about last week, they hit a bit of a skid. They dropped 3 games in a row, and things weren't looking too good. But we said they had 4 unranked opponents remaining this season. They really needed to win all of them. And they've started pretty well. They beat TCU 92-57, and then K-State 72-69. Obviously, their last matchup against K-State, they gave up 61 to the Big Center, and I mean, they got blown out. They come around, they beat them 72-69. Taylor Robertson hits a buzzer beater 3 at the end. They were honoring the 2002 Final Four team and Sherry Cole, so it was a really big win to pick up. And the NCAA Women's College Basketball Committee came out with their top 16 seeds, just like the men's side does. And they were number 9 overall. And that's a 3 seed in the Wichita Regional. And in women's basketball, if you're a top 4 seed, you get to host the first and second round. So that's a really big thing for them. Obviously, the last couple of years have been really down, but being able to host first and second round game is going to be really big for them.
Yeah, for sure. You pretty much play the whole season to play the postseason at home if you're able to. And we spoke on this with the Super Bowl because the Rams are at home. It's not just the fact that you're at home and necessarily the crowd that is the advantage, but it's also the fact that you're in your hometown. You're using the same locker room. You have the same routines. It's the same environment. That's what's really important. Obviously, OU fans are going to show out, if they're able to host, but just kind of the whole mental side of it is always a bonus to be playing the postseason at home. But they're a good team, and they got, some must-win games here if they want to keep that 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. And, you get pretty much a blowout win over TCU, and then you get a close game and beat K-State on a buzzer beater. But you got things moving back in the right direction, and this is the time of year that you got to get things going and start winning some games. I mean, you never want to head into either the conference tournament or March Madness, kind of on a hit or miss streak or even cold. You want to be hot headed in there because, the hotter you are, more than likely, the further you'll go.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got 2 more games against unranked opponents in Oklahoma State and Kansas coming up before they end the regular season. And like we said last week, those are probably must-win games if you want to host the first and second round. They're currently a 3 seed in the Big 12 tournament, and that sets you up pretty well. I mean, obviously, a very winnable first game, and then second game, you see how it goes. But if you can win a couple, maybe probably not going to get up to a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're slotted in as a 3 right now, just like the Big 12 tournament. But you definitely don't want to fall off that 3 line. And if you drop 1 or 2 of these last 2 regular season games and lose in your first Big 12 tournament game, you probably don't get to host. And that's a really big deal in women's basketball and something that they could really use in the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that shows the strength of Big 12 women's basketball. You're a projected 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, but you're also a 3 seed in your own conference tournament. That just shows you how obviously how strong Big 12 women's basketball is, one of the best in all of the conferences.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can go ahead and flip it over to Nebraska basketball, and their men's team, they've had a couple good wins here recently.
Yeah, it's it's been a very, very eventful couple of days for Nebraska. Obviously, Trev Alberts announces that Fred Hoiberg will be back for the 22-23 season. Obviously, his seat is very hot and still is very hot. Probably the hottest on campus, and you never want to have a hotter seat than Scott Frost right now. But with that being said, maybe kind of gives him a breath of fresh air and is able to put a little bit more focus onto actually coaching his team versus worrying about his job. So they come out and they got a game against Iowa, your rival. Obviously, Iowa, very, very good basketball team, year in and year out. And it was a close game, and we really kind of stayed with Iowa the whole game. Pretty back and forth, kind of, had to cut the lead a couple times. And Iowa just kind of started to pull away late in the second half, and Nebraska just didn't have a great answer for it. But kind of the story of the whole season has been the defense, and you're able to put up 78 points, and in college basketball that should win you quite a few games, but you give up 88. It's just tough to basically rely on outscoring your opponents every week when you have no defense. I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of been the story of the season, has been the defense and just, not real competitive on that end. But then we had Penn State, and Penn State, obviously not a powerhouse Big Ten team, but everybody in the Big Ten is above Nebraska. So, you go into Penn State and, you get a 23-point win, you win 93-70. It's your first road win of the year, and they just looked dominant. I mean, they just had control of the game from start to finish. You out-rebounded Penn State 34-22. You go 13 of 20 from three as a team. Bryce McGowan's 25 points on 8 of 13 shooting. Seemed like everything was just going our way. The defense was there. I mean, for how bad it's been this year, only giving up 70 is a very good accomplishment for this team. You put up 93, that wins you almost every single game in college basketball. I don't know where it came from. Just one day one night we go out and get blown out, another night we play them close and lose. And then, out of nowhere, we drop 93 and win by 23. First road win of the season. They've been horrible on the road, and that's nothing new. That's been the trend for 20, 25 years. Finally get your first road win with like 3 games left to play in the season. And then actually tonight, a huge win over number 23 Ohio State. I mean, we had no business even being in that game. And you come out with a 78-70 win over number 23 in the country. And that also on the road being the second road win. Bryce McGowan's 26 points. Alonzo Verge drops a double-double, 13 points and 11 assists. It's nice seeing a couple wins late in the season, but it's pretty much over unless we pull off an absolute miracle and are somehow able to win the Big Ten tournament, which as the guaranteed last 14th seed in the Big Ten tournament, I don't know that we're going to do that. But you never know. I mean, maybe Fred Hoiberg with his guaranteed next year again next year. Maybe he's calmed down a little bit and he's getting this team headed in the right direction, and we can maybe sneak out a win or maybe 2 in the Big Ten tournament. I think that would be really, really big for us. We got one final game to wrap up the regular season. We go to Wisconsin. I believe that's on Sunday. We'll see. You go from not winning a road game all year to winning 2 in a row. Can you make it 3? I don't know. We'll see. It doesn't mean much because we are guaranteed the last seed in the Big Ten tournament. And unfortunately with the way that the Big Ten tournament is set up, if you're the top like 4 seeds, you get like 2 buys in a row. If you're able to even advance that far, you're playing teams that are fresh. It's just tough coming from that far down, and especially in the Big Ten when they're just loaded with talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, just kind of building towards next season at this point, but even that's probably going to be a challenge. I mean, Bryce McGowan's obviously 5-star coming out of high school, potential one and done guy, and the way he's been
Yeah.
playing down the stretch, 25 against Penn State, 26 against Ohio State. You're gonna have to try to find a way to keep him. And I mean, honestly, if he doesn't go to the draft, which he likely will, probably late first rounder, you got to keep him out of the transfer portal because guys want to go where they can win, and especially a guy like a five star like him, McGowan's himself. It's gonna be tough. I mean, you're just kind of building towards next year, see what you can do.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the big stories during the offseason. I think the interesting thing with him is obviously a 5-star and, is kind of all over mock drafts for the NBA. How much higher would he be if he had the exact same stats, but was on a team that was 500 or, in the tournament? How does that change the media's perception and more importantly, NBA's team's perspective of Bryce McGowan's? He does have his brother on the team who's already transferred once. Well, I don't know how much that will affect his decision. I don't know. We'll have to see. He's not from the area. South Carolina, I believe, is where he's from. So yeah, you never know. And it was a miracle pulling him in the first place. And I think if you're in his shoes, I don't think you come back. I think you probably just take the money while it's there, head to the draft and just kind of move on. It's not like it's a down year at Kentucky or a down year at North Carolina. You're playing basketball at Nebraska. You kind of knew the risk coming in. I would think, really kind of rolling the dice there of, maybe you're able to turn it around and you're pretty much the guaranteed best player on the team, guaranteed starter as a freshman. But also you could end up on a team that doesn't get their first road win until the end of February. But yeah, I don't know. That'll be an interesting name to follow. And, pretty much going to be the story to follow for Nebraska basketball this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can go ahead. Yeah, we'll go ahead and moving on to the women's team, who is doing much better than the men's team. They're 22-7 this year, 11-7 in Big Ten play. Their regular season is over. They have the Big Ten tournament coming up. They're the 6th seed in the Big Ten tournament. And they have a first round bye. They will play the winner of the Wisconsin and Illinois game, which I would believe that they would be able to beat both of those teams, whoever they get. A very strong team. Alexis Markowski just earlier today named the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. She dominated high school in Lincoln, came to Nebraska, had a lot of people saying that she was only good in high school because she was, taller than everybody else and comes in and dominates as a freshman and, is probably the best player on the team and is the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. This team's really, really good. They're projected as a 7 seed right now. They got them playing Arkansas in Waco, which Baylor would be the 2 seed there. They would head down to Waco, which a 7 seed's tough because, you're kind of stuck in that position where, you're still playing Arkansas, who's going to be a 10 seed, but you're still playing a Power 5 school. It'll be interesting. And I think maybe a good run in the Big Ten tournament might bump them up a spot. We'll have to see. And especially if they're able to pull off kind of an underdog story here and win the Big Ten, I definitely think it bumps them up for sure. But I don't think that, even if they were to lose that first game, I don't know that they will, but if they were, I think they're pretty much guaranteed to get in no matter what. So at this point, you're really just kind of trying to play to maybe get a better matchup in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously traveling to Waco, 17 games are usually pretty much a toss up. And I mean, Baylor's going to be a tough place to play. They're obviously a very good college basketball program on the men's and women's side, but the women has been very, very good the last 10, 15 years. But I mean, they could always, maybe they pull a surprise. I mean, they've got a couple top 10 wins this season. They're a team that could absolutely do something in the tournament.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that is really motivating about this team is that they have beat a couple top 10 teams this year. So, if they're able to, mirror those games in the tournament, the Big Ten tournament, that is, and go on to win it, I think that'll definitely help them out a lot, not just seeding wise, but also mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how they finish out the season, and we'll go ahead and flip it over to softball now. And Oklahoma had kind of an eventful weekend. They went out and they won the Mary Nutter Collegiate Classic. Their first game, they beat Cal State Fullerton 10-0. Jordy Ball throws a perfect game. She's, true freshman to be throwing perfect games out there. Anyone to be throwing perfect games out there is obviously very impressive. But just kind of another day at the office for OU softball. And then they took on Long Beach State, beat them 11-3. And then the next day they run ruled number 8 Arizona 10-2. And they turned around, they played number 17 Tennessee. And this was a wild game to follow. OU went up 4-1 early. And the Tennessee coach got tossed at one point in the game, and it goes to extra innings. They played 10 innings, and going into the bottom of the 10th, OU was down 8-7. And obviously in softball, you get the runner on second and extra innings, and they were down to 1 out, and Jada Coleman steps up and it's a walk-off 2-run home run in the bottom of the 10th, and they squeak out the win against Tennessee. And I think that's something that can really help them down the stretch. Obviously, last year they were undefeated for a little bit longer during the season, and maybe it would have been nice to get a loss out of the way because you're probably going to drop one at some point. But I think playing close games like this can really, really build the character. And then they beat Utah 2-1 in the championship to take home the Mary Nutter Collegiate Classic. And another tight game. Those are things that can really help a softball team down the stretch in the season. But Jocelyn Allo didn't hit a home run. A lot of teams giving her the walk treatment right now, not really getting a ton of at-bats. Patty Gasso against Tennessee threw her at the top of the lineup so they wouldn't just walk her at the start of the game. But everybody's walking her, so we'll see if and when she can break that record.
Yeah, there's no reason to pitch to her. People don't like seeing her just getting automatically walked, but from a manager standpoint, you can't let her just walk up there and hit a nuke every time. And I think it's just a testament to how good she really is. Honestly, I don't want to throw out comparisons, but the last time we saw somebody, get walked and stuff like that is, you're talking Barry Bonds-esque level hitting. She really is the Barry Bonds of college softball right now. Nobody wants to pitch to her. Nobody can pitch to her. She's dominated everything thrown at her. Doesn't matter what team, what pitch, what situation she's come through. If you want a good laugh, go ahead and take a look at her career stats page. It's absurd. It's literally video game numbers. I feel bad for her because, if people were actually pitching to her, she might hit 60 home runs this year. You're going to look back and I think you're going to say, wow, her career home run numbers, or her senior year at least, are a little bit lower than what we kind of expected. And I think that might happen is she's just going to continue to get walked and maybe not walked, but just pitched around. Nobody's going to throw her. Nobody's going to come right at her. And that's just a testament to the rest of this team too, about how good they are. You run rule the number 8 team in the country. You're number 1 and you're playing number 8. That's supposed to be a tough game, a close game, and you run rule them. But, as you mentioned, that Tennessee game, they finally get a close one. And I think it's great for them because I feel like maybe you kind of get stuck in this, all right, five innings, whatever, we win by 15 and get out of there. And, we said it, this is the best team in the country. There's no doubt about it. They're just phenomenal. They're one of the best teams all time. And, there's the possibility they shouldn't get beat. They really shouldn't get beat. There's not a team in the country that can beat this team, but what's going to beat them is the game of softball. You're going to get beat at some point. That's just how it is. This is the best team in the country. There's not even another team that's even close to them, but somebody's going to beat you on a given day. And they got that scare finally. And I think it's good for them. They had to battle, the nerves were up, the heart rate was up, at bats had a little bit more importance, and maybe you kind of had to do a little bit more situational hitting. And, you go into the extra innings, it's a tight game and you get a walk-off bomb, man, that's how you want to win a close game. And then, after that, you get another close game against Utah where you win 2-1. You get the close game where you have to outscore them 9-8. And then you get the close game where you got to be locked down on defense and pitching and win 2-1. That's a complete weekend where you've got, a few run rules and you beat 2 ranked teams and you win in extra innings in a slugfest. and then you win a pitcher's duel. I mean, that's a complete weekend, and that's a complete team. They're just showing you that they can win at all different types of games being played. They can win the close ones that are, high scoring, the close ones that are low scoring. They can go out there and run rule you. This is a complete team.
Yeah, absolutely. And funnily enough, you mentioned the Barry Bonds esque walk stuff. She had a quote today, I believe, saying that at some point she wasn't sure how she was going to do it, when it was going to happen. She was going to take BP with Barry Bonds someday. So, I mean, that's her goal. And obviously, you brought up the walks that he had to deal with, and now she's dealing with. So, I mean, that's just a pretty interesting goal from a softball player, and something that just shows how absurd her numbers are.
Yeah,
But
and
they've
I
got
hope it
Minnesota.
happens too.
Yeah, that would be something, that'd be a really cool
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
And they've got Minnesota coming up next Monday. Big Ten non-conference game, obviously, before they get into conference play. And I mean, they'll play some tough teams in conference: Texas, Oklahoma State. But like you said, they really shouldn't get beat. I'm sure at some point they will. Just get caught off guard. I mean, you're run ruling almost everybody you play at some point. I mean, like James Madison last year in the Women's College World
Yeah.
Series, and they had to go win 5 games in a row to take the title, which had never been done before. So, I mean, we'll see how things go, but I mean, they really shouldn't get beat.
Nope, they shouldn't. They shouldn't. We'll throw it over to the Huskers here, their softball team. They had a series against Kansas, 3 games. Lost the first one by a lot, wasn't pretty. Then came back to win the next 2. Man, this team's really good too. Obviously not OU levels. Nobody is on that OU levels. But they got the offense firing on all cylinders right now. They're hitting 315 as a team. They got 21 bombs in 13 games. 966 team OPS, which is ridiculous. And when you look at the offensive categories, for the NCAA Division I, they're plastered all over the top. They got things firing right now. This is a very, very good team. And they've got their home opener coming up this weekend. They've got both Wichita State and South Dakota. The weather may be kind of hit or miss. Little warm up here right now. Very enjoyable, about 70, 75 degrees. But there is supposed to be a cold front and some rain move in. We'll have to see what happens there. You never know in the Midwest, especially Lincoln, Nebraska, what the weather's going to be like. But I mean, you go out and play a Power 5 opponent. Kansas, not obviously a powerhouse, but not a terrible team. Usually about 500 every year. And you take a series win, and kind of like I said earlier with baseball, anytime you're able to get a series win, you take it, and that's a happy bus ride home. They got things rolling right now, and I'm definitely excited for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we mentioned the first time we talked about them, they were a 500 team last year, and the jump they wanted to make was, I mean, get into the tournament. And like you said, their offense is really, really good, top 25 ish in most categories. And I mean, 64 teams make the tournament, and we talked about that being the goal. And it looks like, I mean, they're on track. Obviously, they drop an ugly one to Kansas, but I mean, it's a team that looks like on track to meet a goal of making the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think they can. They should be able to do that, especially if they stay this hot on offense. I mean, a 966 team OPS is absurd. And anytime you're hitting 315 as a team, that's not one player. That's not a group of players. That's your entire team. That's every at bat that counts into that. That's insane. That's going to put up some serious numbers on offense, and that'll win you a lot of games, even if your pitching's not there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how they fare in their home opener this weekend. We'll go ahead and flip it over to golf now. And OU men's golf team just kind of par for the course again. They go out to the Southern Highlands Collegiate. Several really good golf teams out there. You got Texas, Georgia, Pepperdine, Georgia Tech, and OU wins it at 38 under. It got kind of close on the final day. I believe Pepperdine was only 1 stroke behind, but they ended up winning by 6, I believe. Patrick Welch wins the individual title and earns himself a start in the Shriners Children's Open, which is obviously a PGA Tour event. And Chris Goddard doesn't have the best week. I believe he posted a 76 in round 2, and he finished, I want to say, 2 over par for the tournament. And I mean, he's obviously the number 1 golfer in the country right now. He was named that this last week. But I mean, you get a pickup. Drew Goodman finished tied 2nd. Logan McAllister, obviously another very good golfer, finishes tied 7th. And I mean, they take it home even when their number one's not playing the best golf.
Yeah, that just shows you how complete of a team this is. A guy who isn't your one or two, I believe Patrick Welch is the three for OU, goes out and wins the title. And then I think on day one and day two, got her up scores thrown out. I believe that, he didn't have a counting score on either day. I could be wrong there. And I'm not sure what he finished up on day three, but man, I mean, you have the number one golfer in the country, and second round 76, and you're still able to go out and win the title. That just shows you the depth of this team. It's absurd how good they are. They have the best of the best, and the guys that are 3, 4, 5 are just as good. I mean, Patrick Welch, who isn't the best player on this team, goes out and wins the tournament. I mean, these guys are loaded. This is the best team in the country. You got Drew Goodman, who's not even in the top three, goes out and finished, tied for second. And I mean, these guys are good, and they're beating good teams too. They beat some good teams down in Puerto Rico, and you have the tournament this weekend, and you beat Texas, Georgia, Pepperdine, Georgia Tech. Those are great teams. Those are some of the best teams in the country. And you're winning again, and your guys are finishing in the top 10. You got 3 guys inside the top 10, and I mean, you got to be happy for Patrick Welch. There's a little bit more meaning to this tournament than just coming home with the trophy. You get to go play in a PGA Tour event. I mean, that is, there aren't many people in the world that get to say they played in a PGA Tour event, even as an amateur. You got to be happy about that. I mean, this team's loaded, and they've been loaded for 10 years, and they're right back where they should be. And I think this is a pretty much unanimous number one in the country. But also, I think a good thing about this team is that there's got to be a lot of competition inside the team. I mean, you've got the number one player in the country, and he didn't win this week. A guy down, further down the order wins. I mean, I obviously don't know what the attitude is inside the practices, but I would love to be a part of that. I mean, the attitude and the competitiveness among the practices there have to be incredible. I mean, every single day when you're going out to play and practice with your teammates, it's got to be tournament level, a tournament level atmosphere. I mean, you're playing against some of the best players in the country, and they're on your own team every single day. You're watching these guys hit shots every single day. The competitions that you have in practice, just mess around with each other. You're against the best players in the country. This team's loaded. And when you got, not just one guy and a bunch of, kind of average or not as good players, all of these guys are incredibly good. It just has to feed off. And it just seems like there's no weak links with this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, I mean, Patrick Welch is probably the number 3 on this team. And he was a guy at the end of last year wasn't playing particularly well. But I mean, this year he's performed very, very well. And obviously not a lot of people know this. It wasn't a tournament, but he recently set the course record at Jimmy Austin, which was previously held by Garrett Ruband and Jordan Spieth, who's obviously a very, very high profile golfer. And I mean, he's playing really, really well. And when you've got a team like this, the number one guy's score doesn't even count once or twice in the tournament, and you still manage to win. It's absurd. And they've got a few more tournaments. Next up is the men's NIT in Tucson, Arizona, and then they'll have 2 more tournaments after that before they go into the Big 12 Stroke Play Championship. But I mean, it's a team that should absolutely compete in NCAA match play. They came up a little bit short last year, but I mean, we'll see. They've obviously beat Texas and Pepperdine this week, and they beat Pepperdine in East Lake Cup back in October, who they fell to in the national championship last year. It's just a really, really good team, and I mean, the goal should absolutely be another national championship.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they've got to be the favorites. I mean, they're loaded, and they've proved it not only in the fall, but also in the spring. Yeah, they're really good. But we can throw it back over to the team up in Lincoln, the Huskers. Not a ton of information on their men's team. They got a tournament coming up this weekend down there in Arizona, but just haven't heard much on them since the last time. In the last episode, I mentioned that they just hadn't put out a ton. They had an alumni deal down there in Arizona. Just hadn't put out much about it. Just still haven't seen anything about that since. But the women's team, they were in the Westbrook Spring Invitational, that down there in Peoria, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix, Westbrook Village Golf Club. They go down there and finish second out of 14 teams. They shoot 11 under as a team. They finished 2 shots behind Mississippi State, who won. Megan Whitaker, ties for 7th, 5 under. Man, they went down there and played some really good schools and came out second out of 14. You got to be happy about that. And, the weather up here hasn't, and especially in Lincoln, has not been, good to go out and play any sort of golf. So, you're going down there without, having played a full round of golf since, probably October, November. You go out there and finish second. You got to be happy about that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oklahoma's women's golf team was also out there at the Westbrook Invitational. They did not fare as hot. They had 2 people finish in the top 15, but 8th overall as a team and out of 14. That's just not very good. But it was their first tournament of the year. And obviously the weather's a little better down here, but we'll see how they fare the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think 2 teams that'll be both men and women for both schools will be very good ones to follow as the spring comes around, the weather gets warmer and they start get to play a little bit more golf. But we'll move into, we got some notes here about just kind of college athletics in general here, some baseball and basketball notes. As we've been mentioning, just a very fun time of the year, very exciting time of the year. College baseball in full stride now. Man, how about Tommy White down there at NC State? This guy's kind of taken the college baseball and Twitter world by storm. A true freshman, and he's got 9 home runs in 8 games. A guy that's kind of, doesn't have a true position on defense. He's more just kind of a hitter than anything. And he's proven it. 9 home runs in 8 games. He's first in the country in home runs. He's second in slugging, first in hits, first in RBIs. As a true freshman. And I think one of the more impressive things about this guy, if you go watch, all 9 of those home runs are to the big part of the field. He's not hooking them down the line. These are absolute moonshots to the big part of the field, and the dude can just absolutely hit.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously for a true freshman, that's unheard of for pretty much anybody. That's unheard of. And yeah. To be putting those stats up early in the season is obviously extremely impressive.
Yeah, and people have noticed too. Trey Turner, shortstop for the Los Angeles Dodgers, went to NC State himself, was a first-round draft pick. He even tweeted at him and said, "We gotta take some BP next time I'm in town." People are noticing this guy. He's been fun to watch. But man, top of the rankings has been Texas this year. Pretty much the unanimous number 1 amongst all polls. These guys are really good. Out of the pen, and their starters are just insanely good. They had a series against Alabama this weekend. I believe only gave up a single run, that being in the 3rd game. You're playing an SEC opponent, which is in a few years going to be a conference opponent, and you hold them to 1 run. That is not a very fun dugout to be in. If you're Alabama, 1 run across 3 games is insane. Doesn't matter who you're playing. Whether that be a very, very bad team, or an SEC team like they did. Alabama, not the best SEC team, but it doesn't matter. That's an incredible team nonetheless. These guys are good. They can hit, they can play defense, they can pitch. They're preseason number 1 in pretty much every poll. They've stayed number 1. This team is really good. I was watching the game earlier. They played Sam Houston State tonight, who's had some big wins. They beat Oklahoma State, earlier this year. Took 3 out of 4 from Nebraska. They had a really good team. They went up 1-0 early in the game. Texas answered. Went on to score 10 and took it home from them. David Pierce, their head coach, obviously was at Sam Houston State before. With Jay Sirianni, the head coach there now, who was played at Nebraska. So you've got some connections there, and I'm sure that's probably how that midweek got set up. And a team that is a mid-major and is dangerous, you go out there and take care of them. This team's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there's a little bit of a Twitter debate going on in our mentions today about mid-majors and how in some cases they're better than the Power 5 teams in baseball, just the way scholarships are set up and everything like that. And I mean, Sam Houston State beat Nebraska, beat Oklahoma State. And I mean, that's no slouch, like you said. And I mean, Texas, they're in the Big 12. They've got Oklahoma State, who's number 4, TCU, Texas Tech, also in the top 25. But I mean, this is a Texas team that looks really, really good.
Yeah, for sure. And, as we mentioned a little bit about the Twitter, had some conversation going on over there. Mid-major schools in college baseball are not what they are in college football. In college football, you pretty much have, the top 4 or 5 teams that are kind of on that elite level and can beat each other. And then outside of that, there's some great teams, there's some good teams, but they just can't really compete. I would say probably like the top 30 teams in college baseball could all take a series over number 1 or, number 2, number 3. I mean, the talent is very spread out. And just because you're not in the SEC or the ACC or the Big 12, Pac-12, it doesn't mean you're not a good team. You're not a top 10 team. The Conference USA, Sun Belt, the WAC, all strong baseball conferences. And, just as good, the top teams are just as good as schools in the Power 5. And, some of these mid-major schools, we say Power 5, some of these mid-major conferences are probably better than the Big 10 and are better than the Big 10. And, I think another thing just about college baseball, like 2016, you had Coastal Carolina win the World Series, who was just not picked to be there. 2008, you have Fresno State come out as a 4 seed, the lowest seed ever to go on to win the national title. I mean, people kind of complain in football that it's stale. We get the same teams every year. This is your breath of fresh air. Obviously I have on here, the MLB season in jeopardy. That's kind of a whole nother topic. They can't get an agreement done. College baseball might be it this spring. Baseball fans might have all their attention focused on the college game this year. And I think this is a very, very important year for college baseball to grow the game. And, you've got so many markets, because I feel like there are schools that, are just kind of, are passive through football and basketball, and are baseball schools. I mean, Sam Houston State, phenomenal football program down there, but, they might be a baseball school. Their baseball has a huge following. Coastal Carolina, fantastic football team out there, man. They take baseball serious over there. These are mid-major schools with serious markets, and with all the attention focused on in this spring, I think this is a huge year for college baseball to make that jump and kind of put themselves as that, third sport. You got football, basketball, and then, there's just not really another one. Baseball needs to take this year and go, super marketing heavy and whatever they need to do to really kind of become that third sport. I mean, ESPN doesn't help them out. I don't know if you've ever watched a college baseball game on ESPN, but it's just kind of, it's a pain. It's never on the front page. Just seeing scores on ESPN for college baseball is impossible, but don't let that deter you. There are many levels, many conferences. It doesn't even have to be D1. There's great baseball everywhere. And without having, the MLB for the foreseeable future, go watch college baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, MLB season in jeopardy right now. And I think I saw something on Twitter today, which was pretty funny. ESPN has tweeted more about I don't remember what 2 non-sports events it was, but there hasn't been a single college baseball event. And obviously, I mean, Major League Baseball not getting things done. And I don't know how you're not talking about college baseball, really.
Yeah, I mean, another note I have on here, you got Ben Joyce at Tennessee, pitcher out there, hits 103.5. That's faster than any MLB pitch thrown in 2021. I mean, like, the talent's there. You're not watching inferior baseball, just because the MLB isn't around. Obviously they're not professional athletes, they're amateurs, but there's more passion. You got a different type of baseball. It's not just home run and strike everybody out and walk. This is a different type of baseball. The MLB game and the college game are completely different. You wouldn't even recognize them. And I think it just gives people, especially MLB fans, another perspective on the who the guys are that are coming up through the big leagues. And even outside of just college baseball, the minor leaguers are playing this year too. So you're getting to see, if the MLB doesn't play at all this year, you get to see the guys that were studs in college last year who are playing at the lower levels in minor leagues this year. You can follow them and go watch them in the minor leagues, because you never get to see that with a normal MLB season, So I think this is a big year for college baseball, and anybody that only, strictly watches MLB. If we don't get that this year, I hope we do. But if we don't, at least for right now, until, pretty much April, it's just college baseball. Take the time to go watch some games. Them being televised are always kind of hit or miss. You kind of, like the tournament down in Arlington, wasn't televised. It was on, I believe, Flow Sports, which, you can go ahead and buy a subscription to that for, 2 months so you can watch it. Like, why would I do that? That's just kind of the frustrating part. You don't really see that with like football and basketball. But yeah, big year for college baseball. They need to take advantage of the professional situation right now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and we'll kind of see how that plays out in the coming weeks. But we'll go ahead and flip it over to college basketball now, and obviously we got the conference tournaments coming up, and it's a really big time for some of those mid-major, smaller schools. Um, One of the teams in particular that we pointed out on our very first college basketball podcast was Wyoming, and I mean they're in a tough conference in the Mountain West. Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, UNLV, some two more traditional schools in that conference. But I mean, they're on the 9 line right now. Teams like that, just working to get into the tournament. Wyoming should be squarely in, but the 9 line's not where you want to be. And I mean, teams like Murray State, Colorado State, it's really all about them right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I kind of mentioned it earlier when we were talking about OU. Some of those top teams can get a little complacent around this time of the year when, you might have a seed locked up in your conference tournament. And we saw that. We had 7 of the top 10 teams lose on one day, 1 through 6, and then 9 all lost. It's the first time ever that the top 6 teams have all been beaten in a single day. It's going to get crazy. It's going to continue to get crazy. It's like this every March. It hasn't even really begun yet. Selection Sunday is March 13th. So, just coming up here in a couple of weeks, once conference tournaments are over, and conference tournaments already starting up. Some of those smaller conferences have already begun, and some of them, Power 5 and bigger conferences still have a couple regular season games to wrap up. But this is the fun time of the year where games start to matter, and we'll have to see who is able to steal some bids. That always a big conversation, because you got some bubble teams that are maybe first 4 out. They need some luck come tournament time. They need the top seeds to win, because if the top seeds win the conference tournament, then there's not, they get that automatic qualifier. Versus if they're beaten and somebody who's not going to get in wins the conference tournament, then they're stealing a place from one of those bubble teams. We saw that happen a couple times last year. I believe Georgetown and Oregon State were the big 2 that really kind of stole some bids. And you get some great teams that get left out of the tournament. So we'll have to see how that shakes out.
And like you said, 7 of the top 10 teams lose on one day. Kansas just dropped another one. They just lost on the road to TCU, and I mean they were on the 1 line, and that's probably going to drop them off the 1 line for now. They've obviously got the Big 12 tournament, but and a team in Kansas who, I mean, they really haven't made a super deep run of the tournament in a little bit. A 1 seed could be big time for them, but I mean, it's just kind of wide open in college basketball right now, and we'll kind of get into some teams that we like here. And I mean, I'll start it off with one. I like Arizona a lot. This is a team, their head coach obviously came from Gonzaga, and they're top 10 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. And only Gonzaga is the only other team that does that in the entire country. And like I said, Tommy Lloyd's their head coach, came over from Gonzaga this year. And that's a team I really like to make a deep run in the tournament. And they're playing USC later tonight, who is I believe, number 16 in the country. So we'll see more of them tonight as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll go basic on teams we like, but I think Gonzaga is pretty much the unanimous number one and are the favorites headed into the tournament. Not as good as they were last year, but I think one of the things last year was the fact that they were undefeated. You got into tournament time and it was like, we have to go undefeated the entire year. We can't lose a single game if we want to be the national champion. And they almost did it. But I think that was kind of the main reason that people were shying away from picking them to win it all, was because it's impossible almost to go undefeated the entire season. It doesn't matter who you're playing. I think maybe that affected them a little bit in the championship game last year, knowing that they were, on the edge of history. But this year they're back, they're loaded again. This is a very good team, both on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. Don't play in the toughest conference in the whole world, or in the world of sports, but I think they're loaded again, and I think this might be the year they get it done. That's kind of been the thing about Gonzaga, is they just haven't been able to finish the job. Been so close so many times with so many great players and have been able to get it done. I think this is the year that they should be able to get it done, but then again, it's March and you never know. So
Yeah, absolutely. I believe 2 runner-up finishes in the NCAA tournament since 2017 for Mark Few's team. And I like them a lot too. I think they'll get to the Final Four. Drew Timme, Chet Holmgren, obviously a very, very good front court. Another team I like, to keep it in the same conference, the West Coast Conference, St. Mary's. They shut down Drew Timme the other night. They upset Gonzaga. And I believe right now they are a 6th seed in the South region. Yes, 6th seed in the South region. And I mean, they're a team that plays really, really good defense. I believe top 10 in defensive efficiency as well. And I mean, you get these mid majors. I think Joe Lenardi said they were really the only true mid major. Like Gonzaga's not really one, because they've been traditionally good for a very long time now.
Yeah.
But I mean, St. Mary's is a 6th seed. That's really, really dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing about the team is they are historically in the tournament. This is not a team that just got hot one year and happened to get in. This is a team that's here almost every single year, and have, at least for the past couple of years, kind of been the little brother to Gonzaga. Gonzaga has pretty much just been able to been penciled in that conference as the winner. This is a very, very good team as well, and another team that I liked. I definitely see them having a possibility to make a deep tournament run. And that conference tournament's going to be very fun to watch, because I think it will come down to Gonzaga and St. Mary's. But I think Gonzaga is definitely the better team. But, with that being said, St. Mary's can easily beat them and has. So, definitely another fun team to watch out there. I really like that team as well.
Yeah. And kind of on bigger note teams, I like Kentucky a lot. I think they can score the ball really well. Ty Washington, obviously a very good player. I'm kind of selling Kansas. I mean, like I said, they just dropped to TCU. I'm not a huge believer in them. Remy Martin, we'll see if he can stay healthy. He's had some injury issues this year. But another team I really like to do some damage in the tournament is Iona. Obviously coached by Rick Pitino, and right now they're slotted in as the 12th seed as an automatic qualifier against Texas. And Texas, obviously, we saw them last year with Shaka Smart go out in the first round to Abilene Christian. They've got Chris Beard, who obviously took Texas Tech to the national championship game a couple years ago. But I mean, Rick Pitino he's a coaching legend, albeit how it ended at Louisville, not on the best terms, but he obviously knows how to coach basketball, and that's a team I really like to make a potential run to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, for sure. That was a team last year. I remember, I believe a 15 seed last year. Yeah. And who did they have? Was it Alabama?
Alabama. Yeah, it was close down to the end. Alabama had a really off shooting night. Iona was really, really good defensively.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that being a team last year that I liked in an upset. And anytime you're in the 12-5 game, you got to love that being a mid-major, especially coached by Rick Pitino. I mean, if they're coached by anybody else, I don't know that I love them as much. But you got a guy that at the head who's been there and done it and has done some very, 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 very great things in basketball. That is, as you mentioned, some off the court issues that, I've gotten him to Iona for a reason. There's a reason he's at Iona, but is definitely probably one of the best coaches in college basketball right now. And a guy that should be able to stay calm and cool on the sidelines under pressure in March Madness. He's been there and he's done it before many times. And they were there last year. You got guys coming back that played in that environment last year. I agree. That's definitely a very, very fun team to watch headed down the stretch.
Yeah. One other team that I wanted to mention was Arkansas. I believe they were a 3 seed last year. Almost got beat by that Oral Roberts team. But this is a team, they didn't start very well. They were on the outside looking in earlier in the season. Oklahoma beat them. But this is a team that has really, really turned it around. I believe they've won 12 of their last 13 now. And I mean, they're hot right now. They're on the 5 line, but I mean, that's a team that could make a run in the SEC tournament and do some damage. I mean, they've been on a run. That's Auburn, Kentucky. They beat one of those teams. They're moving up, and right now they've got them slotted into Kansas region. And like I said, I'm kind of selling Kansas. That might be, I mean, that's a team that I think could take Kansas to the wire, if not beat them.
Yeah, for sure. And already beat Auburn this year as well. Auburn, one of the best teams in the country. One of the best team in the country. They've, already taken them down, upset them, just a couple of weeks ago. I agree. And another team that was in that position last year and made a pretty deep run last year, got the scare by Oral Roberts. Fortunately, we're able to just kind of sneak by them. That was a very dangerous team last year. But yeah, another team that I think is lock and loaded and is getting hot at the right time and winning games against ranked teams at the right time. It is the SEC, and you never know what could happen in that conference tournament. Loads and loads of talent, lots of good teams, obviously in the SEC in every sport. But man, if they're able to do some damage in the SEC, get into a favorable region, I definitely think this is a team that can make probably an Elite 8 run. Maybe Final Four, we'll have to see, but they're a good team, and they got guys that were there last year, and they've got that experience, and experience definitely is one of the most valuable traits outside of physical abilities. That they're good. I definitely agree with you that they're going to be a fun team to watch down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other teams you like?
Yeah, I've had my eye on Providence this year. They've had a really good year this year. A name that has been in the tournament before, but I believe hasn't been in a few years now. Not in the biggest conference in the world, but are definitely making it known that they've got a very, very good team this year. I believe they only have something like 3 or 4 losses this year. I think. Yeah. I'll let you quote me on that. I don't know their exact record off the top of my head, but I definitely know that this is a team that's playing very good basketball. They've been hot the entire year. And they're a team that traditionally I feel like makes the tournament. Obviously I don't know their exact tournament appearances, but usually a name that we see kind of in the tournament in March Madness every year. And they're back having a phenomenal year this year. I know I believe, I'll let you quote me again, I think a 3 seed they have them projected at right now.
They've got them as a 4. Texas
4?
is the 5 right there, and then that's the game that Iona's in as well. So kind of a tough spot to be in, and then Arizona's the 1 there. But yeah, I like Providence a lot. Obviously a very, very tough top half of that Midwest region: Arizona, Texas, Iona. And then Kentucky's on the bottom side of that. It's a 2 seed. But I mean, they're going to be battle tested. They played Villanova tonight. They came up just a little short, lost by 2.
Oh,
but obviously, I mean, Villanova.
Yeah,
Villanova slotted in as a 3 seed. Jay Wright, obviously another very good team. But I mean, another team that I think has been kind of hot recently is Wisconsin. I believe they're slotted in as a 4 seed right now. You never know. I mean, the Big Ten, obviously, Ohio State, even though they lost to Nebraska tonight. I mean, they've got Purdue. Michigan is, I believe, right now the last team in the tournament. But that's a team, I mean, they were top 5 in the preseason. And Wisconsin is up by 3 with this 1.5 seconds left against Purdue right now. So we'll see how that finishes here in a few moments. But that's a potential really, really good team. And then one last kind of Cinderella type team I've got is Davidson. And stop me if you've heard this before. Davidson team that can really, really shoot the three ball. Kind of like the Steph Curry days. They're slotted in as a 10 seed. But
I believe they're a 10 seed in that tournament as well. When, Steph Curry kind of got his name out there, I want to say they're a 10 seed in that tournament as well. So,
yeah, that's a team. I mean, that's a dangerous team. Anytime, you can shoot the three ball like they can. You get hot in one game and it's lights out for the other team. Their season's over. But yeah, that Steph Curry team, I want to say they were a 10 seed, but they played OU really, really tight early in that season, who obviously had Blake Griffin. I want to say Steph Curry's dropped like 40 something that game. But another Davidson team that can really shoot the three ball. And Wisconsin did just beat Purdue. So Purdue's obviously on the 2 line right now. 2 very good basketball teams there.
Yeah, they've got Nebraska next. So they should, hopefully not. Hopefully Nebraska pulls another upset. But Wisconsin should have one more win left on the schedule headed into the Big Ten tournament there too. So, yeah. But that Davidson team, when you can light it up from beyond the arc as a lower seed in the tournament is definitely, I think, a good way to win at least one game and get an upset. That's what that Oral Roberts team did really well last year. They scored the ball really well. You had the country's leading scorer in Max Asmus. I think the ability to shoot the three ball well and run up the score is interesting because I don't think that it's a super strong suit for a higher seed and a top 4 seed. I think that, you have to play good defense and you have to be sound on defense. Obviously you got to be able to score some points as well. But I think that having a good defense as a higher seed is what takes you deeper into the tournament. But I think if you're a lower seed and a mid-major, I think the ability to score 90 points in a game and light it up from behind the arc is a good way to pull an upset and win 1 or 2 games in the tournament. So, they've done it before. I mean, although they're, obviously nobody on that team is still on, from Davidson's tournament team with Curry is on the team now. Obviously it was, years ago, but kind of that attitude and that mentality just kind of lingers around. And there might not be anybody from the program that's still around there, but, you have a role model to look at and say, look, I mean, we did that X amount of years ago, and made a deep run. So, the template's there for them to do it. And they've got something to look back at and say, we've been here before, we've done this before, we can do this now.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were a 10 seed in that tournament and they made a run to the Elite 8. And almost beat Kansas, who was the eventual champion that year. They beat Memphis in that memorable national championship game. They lost to Kansas by 2. Also was a 10 seed. So we'll see if they can make another run this year.
Yeah. And man, love this time of the year. I am very, very excited for Selection Sunday. That is definitely something that I watch very intently every single year. And I get super into March Madness. I make like 8 brackets every year, and do tons of research. I mean, I have an Excel file with stats for every team that is in and break it down. And I spend hours, analyzing just for my perfect bracket to be busted on about the 3rd game every year. I mean, I love March Madness and I know you do as well. And we'll have plenty of content both on our Twitter and Instagram. You guys can follow us there. Just Fight Song Sports at Fight Song Sports, both places. And we'll definitely have an episode covering it and covering our brackets and what we think. So, we got an exciting couple of weeks here. I mean, just 2 weeks until the brackets are announced and even conference tournament time's exciting. Seeing who might be able to steal a bid. So, man, love college athletics this time of the year. March, April, probably the best time for it outside of the college football season. Fun time of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nebraska, just started spring practice up, I believe, for football?
I believe so. Yeah. Got spring practice started. I know they posted a video of the team doing some conditioning from last week when the weather was, in the single digits all week. Just kind of shows you the Midwest. It was about 75 degrees in Lincoln today. And last week, I don't know that it got above 15 or 10 degrees. It was about, 5 and the wind was blowing about 30 miles an hour. You're talking fields in the negative 20s and 30s, and they're outside conditioning with no shirts on. You got to love the culture there. And Frost, had a press conference and said that, he wasn't sure who the best quarterback was, and that, he was working with the, not the first team, but the second and third team. And, he did mention that, Torres was with him, Harburg was with them, and even, threw Smothers' name in there with him as well. And then Whipple kind of came out and said that Casey Thompson is going to be the guy going forward, kind of as we expected. But just kind of from what I understood from the interviews was that it's going to be Casey as the 1 and Chubba Purdy as the 2, which I don't know. I mean, I think 2 is going to be pretty toss up between him and Smothers. We'll just have to see. It's obviously very early, but yeah, I mean, you get spring practice coming up too, so that'll be a big one to watch. And I believe Nebraska has already sold something like 40,000 tickets for the spring game, so that'll be a fun one to watch, and definitely an important one to watch as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And OU's got Junior Day coming up this weekend, like I said on the last episode. So probably going to be a couple commits coming out of that. So we will definitely cover that in the next episode. OU still doesn't have a spring game date announcement officially yet. Ethan Downs' dad, father on Twitter, said like April 23rd, I believe. But there's been nothing official from the athletic department, which is kind of weird. But they're going to start up spring practice here once we get back from spring break at OU. So, I mean, we'll just kind of see how that goes. Hopefully no injuries for either team here.
Yeah, for sure. And 2, as we said before, 2 very important spring practices and spring football games, and, important ones to watch as well. So it'll be good heading down the stretch here, not just with football, but with basketball and baseball, softball, golf, all of it going on. Love this time of the year. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Appreciate you guys for watching. Whether you guys are watching on YouTube, listen on SoundCloud, check us out on both. We upload on both. And I dropped the Twitter and Instagram at Fight Song Sports earlier. So go ahead and follow us on there. Post pretty much daily on Twitter and important events on Instagram. Looking to get a little bit more active over there as well. So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys next week.